Actually, how much is recruit pay now?
So in the past, I was saying that, my runner was quite a sad case. He needed to go and sell illegal VCD, right? But he was very loyal. So he told me this, and I always remember this story. So the rules may say certain things, but beyond the rules, we try and help take care of one another.
Do you think that there could come a day where women will be required to enlist?
Maybe I'm a bit more conventional as a guy to say like, I would rather my girlfriend sit at home and shake leg while I fight in the jungle.
In the case of an attack, I don't want to be waiting for a man to save me. I want to actively do something.
And today there's no such thing as front line and back line. If Singapore is ever attacked, we are all on the line. right.
There's so many female gamers now.
Yeah.
They sure can fire a weapon on.
Yeah.
I see how they fire in game.
Yeah. This is my formal announcement that I will be doing the women's boot camp.
Yeah.
Yay!
Turned out.
When we were comparing kind of like before and now, and with how much like the generations have changed, right? How much of the mindset is that, because you were just mentioning like how we're not going to tailor make the place to be like a bed of roses, they can lie down kind of thing. How much of it are we still trying to go the hard route of, let's say punishment, 20 push-ups, or there is a certain level of fear, of course, that, okay, if you are against the regiment, there's DB, there's all these kind of things. How much of it is using that versus a possible softer approach now with a lot of, let's say, Gen Alpha, Gen Zs coming in, which, there's this stereotype that they are, softer or strawberry generation, this kind of thing. But as in to balance that thought is also, I myself, I think the peak of one of my kind of mental stresses was when I was in pro term. I felt very alone, borderline like anxious, a little bit depressed. And the only place that they sent me to talk to was like my sergeant major. And the tricky thing there was that I realized the sergeant major was basically a regular from like 14, right? And so there were a lot of experiences which he couldn't empathize with me on. So again, I was thrown back into the system where like, I didn't know where to go and I couldn't really adapt very well. And recently on a basketball court, I had someone like talk to me on this also. He's very much struggling with this, like trying to adapt into the system. And I get it because, I had my journal, so I had a way to keep myself moving. But is there a way for these kind of like people who find it harder to adapt? Is there a way that you would recommend them to get help or seek better counsel? Sometimes even they feel like really, wow, all my sergeants against me, my CO, my OC against me. Where do I go? You know what I mean?
So actually, I would say that, what Thomas has raised is something that every generation of NS men, and when I say a generation, nowadays, one generation means a few years. It's not like one generation means 25 years. I have seen quite different generations of NS men learning how to cope, and I've seen different generations of the SAF system supporting our NS men learning how to cope. I think in the very early years, right, it's like, hey, come, friend, don't tell me your problem. Can you just get on with the job and get it done? That is the... So, and that generation, also maybe because people tend to be a bit more reserved in the early generations, like, you don't go and tell people that, oh, I'm stressed. You don't tell people your own problem, because maybe there's something about the man psyche that I'm not supposed to reveal my vulnerabilities.
Right.
That could be very early generations. And then there's a certain very perception of a very harsh environment, and we are supposed to go through this.
It's just man up.
Yeah.
That
could be the very early generation.
Right.
Then over time, I think the SAF has also put in place a certain system to support them. But I would say that actually, I always realize that the first line of support is not so much the SAF system about the in-check, the platoon commanders or the sergeant majors and things like that. It's actually the peer support system. And even my time, I realized that most of our time, the first thing we go into NS is that we always have a buddy that we identify, even from BMT, that's your buddy. And the first thing that gets drilled into our head is that you need to take care of your buddy. And you must be able to talk to your buddy and share almost all the personal things so that they know one another well to support one another. And I think regardless of what the SAF support system put into, to me, there's always the first layer and the most important layer, that buddy support of being able to confide with one another. Then after that, then we talk about the rest of the SAF support system, whether you have asking the platoon commanders, the sergeant majors, all that, to go through some courses to help guide the people so that they are much more aware of what to be done, or even at a higher level, the clinical psychologists and things like that. So there are different tiers of support, but to me, the most important is always the peer support within the framework. The other thing that is quite unique to our system compared to other people is that because we choose our commanders from the same cohort. So the people who are commanding the NSF or the NS-men actually are fellow NSF and NS-men. And they are the one chosen by their peers, and hopefully the peers choose the ones that are able better to understand them. So like for example, some of these stresses and strains, like for example, NS-men. In the past, if the NS-men say that, oh, I want to defer my in-camp training because I have this, that, then in the past, we asked the regulars to decide and say whether this person should be deferred or not. But you know, the regular, he's doing the SAF job regular full-time, right? He has not much context. As much context about what's happening outside. So over the years, we have realized that actually the more effective system is to ask the NS-man, who is the commander of the other NS-men, to make the decision, because they are fellow NS-men out in CV Street, trying to face the stresses and strains of CV Street. So when the NS-men say that, hey, actually, I think this NS-men deserve a break and go and take care of either the family issues or take care of the professional issues, I think there's much greater credibility, and which is why now a lot of these deferment decisions are actually made by the NS commanders themselves. So of course, someone will say that, oh, what if the NS commander bully me? What if the NS commander mark me, as they say? But you see, there's always a system to escalate, right? So if we don't think that the platoon commander, the most direct one, or the platoon sergeant who are fellow NS men can't empathize, then there's one more layer up, and then you just go through the chain of command. But I always thought that the people who understand the NSF best are those who are closest in age and in, if you like, vocation to the fellow NS men.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting because, I've never seen it as that way. When you're actually a recruit, right, the sergeants become very you think they are hierarchy, right? It's very scared to approach them. But in this case, actually, knowing that they are the same batch and same peers, at most 1 year apart, actually they should be seen as kind of like, civilian peers, and also that they can relate back to your problems. And it kind of leads me to another question, which I have from this whole thing is, as much as there are stresses in camp, right? I also hear of a lot of peers, and even when I was in BMTC, a big AWOL issue was when they have families which they need to support outside of NS, right? And this kind of brings in kind of NS pay and, how much they earn in NS, and when they go out of it, some people really, if I can clock in those extra 3-4 hours just to, do whatever ride hailing or delivery, just to give my family more money. I don't know, is that something that has come up?
Oh yes, always come. I mean, let me share with you a couple of stories that when I was in command. Even my runner, who is my signaller, this many years ago, he used to be what we call illegal VCD seller. I don't know whether current generation know what's called VCD. VCD,
Yes.
Because in the past, I see you're not in the, you are now in the Netflix generation. Okay, it used to be that one of these VCD, the so-called pirate copy, the thing, sells about $10. So he makes about maybe at least $5 or $7. And if he take the risk and go and sell 20 of them, at that time, many years ago, it was almost the same as his NSF pay. And we can understand this because he's not a graduate or anything. He dropped out of school very early, and he has a family at the age of 18, 19. So ever since the SAF was formed, we will always have challenges where there are some people who will be financially strapped when they come into NS. And that is why we have all these financial schemes to try and help this NSF. But this has nothing to do with the NSF pay, because the NSF pay is structured to cover all the incidentals when you are out of camp over the weekends and all that kind of things out there. So there's a certain pay that you adjust according to the cost of living, the transport cost, the food cost, based on the assumption that this covering the incidental or the SAF take care of the rest of the things while you are in camp. But what Thomas say is very important, because there will always be some people who will be a bit strapped because they have other family commitments, and we have financial schemes to, on top of the NSF pay, to make sure that we help these people, because we want our NSF to concentrate on their training and make sure that they are not distracted. Because once they are distracted, anything in NS can be dangerous if you are distracted. So this is how we seek to help our NSF during those critical years. But this is an issue that we are keenly aware of. I have also previously I have NS men who came back for whatever reasons they were overseas, and by the time they come back serving, they are past 30 years old. And it's really a challenge for them to take care of their families and the NS duties at the same time. And this is why we try to, at the local level, make all kinds of different provisions to put them in appointments that allow them to best contribute and yet at the same time take care of the family. Because our philosophy is this: if you cannot focus, you cannot take care of your family, you can't be focusing on your NS duties at any one time.
Especially in a high-risk environment also,
Yes.
right? Because I don't know if you've ever heard your friends complain about the pay. Actually, how much is recruit pay now? I know every year it gets increased a little bit, right? Inflation, huh?
No, actually, we are constantly reviewing. There's actually a mechanism within the MINDEF whereby every few years you will review the NSF allowance and also the NS-men allowance, right? So there is a system that allows us to track the thing. And then there's a basket of goods that we say, and what are all the incidentals that someone need to spend on when you are outside camp. But at the same time, you must not create a disincentive structure whereby the combatants, those who are always on duties, get so-called recognized less than those people who are perhaps able to go home more frequently and things like that. So we also have to make sure that there's no invidious comparisons between people serving in different vocations, making sure that we take care of our NSF and NSM.
My personal perspective was always like, because when you have to pay so many people a certain amount, right, I would almost say like I trust the experts which in the government to run the numbers lah, and that's why we have our reserves and all this kind of things. But of course, I'm pretty aware that I come from a place of privilege, of the fact that I can earn, let's say, $700 in BMT, and my parents can take care of themselves, you know. And then if I go to SES and stuff like that, and there are a lot of, I would say there's a lot of factors of, you know, you're covered because you're staying there, you're covered for food. And then on top of that, you still got, so if you do well in marksman, you get a certain amount. We get our IPPT test money. There are incentives through the year and then vocational kind of like incentives as well lah. So I feel like that's quite balanced.
We always keep a very close record of who are the people who need some extra help. And we will try within our means to do all this and help them. And also to put them in a vocation that allows them to contribute their best. So in the past, I was saying that, my runner, it was quite a sad case. I was saying that he needed to go and sell illegal VCD, right? But he was very loyal. So he told me this, and I always remember this story. He said, sir, you just tell me when is the battalion proficiency test. I will make sure that I come back. I won't go and run anywhere and do any other things. I will come back. I will fight with you. But after the test, if I really cannot take it, I really have to go out and do some other things, and you just excuse me. So it's very sad. So I always remember the episode. That's why as a commander, we always make it a point to understand not just understand the strength and weaknesses of our soldiers, but understand their family background and see how best we are. Because if he keep running away to do all this job, he'll never finish his NS. The pain just get prolonged. So we all try to chip in and say that, okay, how can we get him to finish his time in NS as soon as possible, right? And then he can go and take care of his family because he needs to find a job and so on and so forth. So these are some of the things that, if you like, unspoken within a unit of what brings us together. It's not just about fighting, contributing according to our strengths, but how we take care of one another beyond what the system had. And in every unit, there will be cases whereby we need to go beyond what the system can to ask ourselves how we can actually give the person a bit more time to take care of it. I mean, I'll be very frank, as we all know, because there will be invidious comparisons. So why this person can go for a bit more nights off, and what is he doing, and why am I doing this? But this is where the whole unit comes in, and some of them really know that, okay, this person really have some issues outside, and then they need that little bit of extra time, and then we just cover the duties rather than say that, hey, why is it so unfair? So, this goes back to just now what we say, is also part of the life skills, right? Of how we take care of one another as a unit rather than to say, why is it like that? Because if you force the person to the brink and then they can't take care of their family, then they can't contribute to the unit as well. So I think in my unit, when I was the commanding officer, we didn't win any glorious awards, what best unit and things like that. But I think it's this type of things that makes us really bond together as a unit, as families, and we know that we can rely on one another. So the rules may say certain things, but beyond the rules, we try and help take care of one another.
It's quite reassuring to hear that from top down, there's this kind of mindset that we are still quite inclusive of, different kind of backgrounds and different kind of situations. So if like out there people are facing things, right, you all clip this, then you all show your commander.
No, seriously, I expect all my commanders that it's like my signaller, my runner says that only after a while, when there's so much trust that he can tell you that So I'm not betraying the unit. I really want to fight with the unit, but there are things that I need to take care of, and I hope that you understand. And because he's so frank with us, I can also then say that, okay, then let me try and help you in different ways to try and overcome that and allow you to finish off your NSF time properly, so then you can take care of your family, and then we can take care of you, you can take care of us.
Yeah, definitely. I want to talk about the other half of our population, the women.
Yeah.
Me. Unsurprisingly, we've also gotten quite a few questions about women in NS, and we see that birth rates in Singapore have been dropping. Do you think that there could come a day where women will be required to enlist?
Okay, before we answer that question, if we say,
I knew it.
what would be your position to us?
Look, I'm down. Like, I'll do it if I have to. I think it's because, like, if you told me that I had to enlist tomorrow, obviously I'd have a couple of doubts about it because I'm not mentally prepared for it.
Right.
But if I was younger, then I knew that by the time I turn 18, I'm like, I have that mental resilience, and I know that when I turn 18, I'll have to serve. So I think it would be much better for me. That's in terms of NS.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. Like, I think.
Okay, before I give you the official thoughts, let's
Yes.
hear from Thomas also.
Okay.
I mean, surely you're talking among your friends, right, as to whether females should serve NS, right?
I mean, to Tanisha is, and I will always challenge people who say like, oh yeah, like women who say like, oh yeah, I'll be down to serve. I'm like, there's SAF VC, there's women boot camps.
No, definitely.
Go and try it.
Yeah.
Which I think that's to me, that's the fun part of it where you can get a glimpse of it.
Yeah.
I think to that degree, for me, I feel that's enough for women. Maybe I'm a bit more conventional as a guy to say like, I would rather my girlfriend sit at home and shake leg while I fight in the jungle. Still got someone to feed the cats. But I think right now what NS has is the fact that if women want to sign on, they have the option to. And I think that's enough. That ideally we wouldn't get to a place where we would need to cultivate our own Mulans into the army lah. Like, ideally,
That'd be cool.
Because as you said, birth rate dropping.
Yeah.
In that case, actually, who is most important in continuing generations, just very logically speaking, is the women, right? So, yeah, I'm on the side where I don't think the equality side needs to come in of like, oh, women, men both need to serve, but it's like the options are there.
Yeah.
If the women want to serve, there are multiple roles in our. I've had friends who signed on as well, Navy, Air Force, whatever. So that I'm kind of glad. And other than that, I think the onus on me is that, yeah, men should be serving here. Yes, 2 years get taken away, but the balance comes in. I mean, if we are there complaining, is that the balance comes in when women have to have a kid and they have to take maternal leave. That is the duty that they sort of serve, and it's almost like, yeah, no choice, right? Like if you want to have a kid, you have a kid, and that's the kind of thing that women give back also.
Yeah.
So
I would do the boot camp. I think that it's very important for us to have those like basic skills. Like I would want to learn.
At least you know what your guy friends are talking about, right?
Yeah, and also then I don't have like FOMO anymore.
2 day, 1 night
And then
NAVEX
it's like-
exercise. We need to put like 4 girls, one section, go out and do it. I think it would be so good.
Like I would want to know how to fly a drone or like even basic medical training so that in the case of an attack, I don't want to be waiting for a man to save me. I want to actively do something.
Okay.
And I'm sure many women, have the same sentiment, but at the same time, like, and we talked about this in the total defense episode that total defense and defense in general is not just military, right? It's other things like psychological or civil. So even things like, being that listening ear, that morale boosting for your friends or your family who are doing NS, I think that's really important. Would you think that that's important? I hope it's important.
Again, I wouldn't want to put my mom through any of this. Ideally, my girlfriend also just go and paint her nails.
Like morale boosting, like being there for you and like talking to you about your experience.
I mean, I'm more on the side of what Minister said, right?
Yeah.
Of having the females in our country get a glimpse of what it looks like, so they relate better when we're talking about something or when we explain certain hardships, just so everyone is part of it. Not only unites the male population here, but it really unites the whole country in having a glimpse of what it is.
But I think it also does come from that intrinsic desire as a woman, right, to want to do it. It's not like the government is telling me that I have to do it.
Okay, so why don't I give you do a few thought experiments with you and see where you land.
Let's
go.
So let me start with this. In our constitution, it says all able-bodied Singaporeans can be enlisted.
Okay.
No, it's our constitution.
Yeah.
So there was no gender reference as to male or female. It was a policy decision. It's not a constitutional thing.
Right.
It was just a policy decision, right? We enlisted all the males, right? But in our constitution, it says all able-bodied Singaporeans. Okay, so that's one. The second thing
Is
is,
that wrong? I thought it was men. I thought it was only men.
no, in the constitution, it's Singaporeans, right?
Oh.
But then we are also very conscious that, it's not so much as whether we are, because of declining birth rate and whatnot. Actually, the nice thing about having a conscript armed forces is this: your manpower 18 years out. So we must always remember to cut our coat according to the cloth that we have, right? So you cannot. So I always tell the SAF, you cannot suddenly turn up and say, "Hey, sir, this year I don't have enough manpower." It's like, hey, friend, you knew that 18 years ago, right?
Right.
You should have planned for it. Whether you want to spend the money to buy technology, to redesign the force structure, redesign your fighting concept, you must have all done that 10, 20 years ago.
Right.
Right? There's no such thing as last minute. Because even medical attrition, you can have some kind of projection on what kind of numbers you will get. So I don't think we review medical classification system or just put the women in because we have a short-term issue. Because you shouldn't be surprised by any short-term issue. So that's one. Then the question is that over time, actually, as what Thomas was saying, that actually a lot of females have come on board. Today, more than 10% of the SAF is actually female.
Wow, 10%.
And it has been growing.
Yeah.
Some of the vocations grow a bit faster, like for example, the Digital Intelligence Service, the Navy, because Navy started a bit earlier. So I think over time it has, and today we have many other programs to allow the females to contribute, whether it's the SAF, VC, or even to take up short programs. It may not be for full deployment, but as Thomas was suggesting, to let them experience, understand. And to your point, actually, the women do many other things as part of our total defense. So it's not as if that the women never do anything for defense, right? And today, if you look at the skill sets, there are a lot of skill sets that it's not so physically demanding like in the past. Just now we were talking about the medical classification system, that actually the women can play a part. For example, I always find that the women are very good at intelligence analysis.
Yes.
I don't know, the brain is wired.
Big brains.
Not just whether big or small brain, it's the way you come with different perspective. I find it very interesting, right? So there are many things that can do. Okay, so we say that it's not under our constitution that women cannot serve. Yep. And then we also say that based on our operational needs, we may not need the women to serve now, right? But so somewhere in between, would you support, say, having women come in to learn certain skill sets? It may not be the full-fledged infantry commandos type, but to learn certain skill set for a certain period of time. Would you think your friends or your circle of friends or the ladies will support this kind of thing? Because people have suggested, hey, why not bring the females in and then say do something like medical?
Yeah.
Because even if the guys are fighting in front, your medical could include your psychological support and all that kind of things, right? But it's something useful. Yeah. Or it could be something like, for example, in the digital side, it could be something like that. Or even, for example, in the combat logistics side, whereby how you man up all your manning centers, your mobilization centers. These are things that many of the SAF volunteer corps do. Okay, so between the two extreme, do you think that your friends will accept somewhere in between and support having somewhere in between?
I think so. I think my friends would, yeah. I mean, because if we're all doing it together, then yes, I think so. It's like a normalized sort of thing.
No, because I have heard such suggestions.
That helps. The fact that everyone needs to do it.
Exactly, that camaraderie, and also the fact that, oh, you're doing it, I'm doing it, we're all doing it.
Yeah.
I have two thoughts. One is, first question is how long? Yeah. Right? Because if you guys need to do 2 years, to me that feels very long for a niche specialization trait.
Okay.
The other thought is also, and I guess this is the part that maybe people also don't think about, is if we also mobilize the women population, that's an entire group of population that is away from the workforce entirely versus 50%.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? And so that drops productivity. I'm sure you guys think super big picture, right? So that's why I'm like, duration matters in this case.
So I think that's why our policy has always been that we only enlist people when there are clear operational needs. Because what you don't want is you end up in some systems in history whereby people just get enlisted. And if people get enlisted and they don't do meaningful things, actually it's a net negative for the society. People's commitment to defense is like, why am I going there to waste my time? Or you don't want to run a system whereby people think that, oh, we got so many spare manpower, then everybody either try to king and say that I'm going to do less, or why don't they ask somebody else to do? Yeah. So actually we need to keep a certain discipline, a certain tightness to the system whereby people who are enlisted, you have very clear mission and clear roles on what you're expected to do. Then if that's the case, then the argument for enlisting women is quite different from operational needs. Then that's where Thomas' point come in. How long? Which areas? Right? Do you get to choose? Is it compulsory? So I think somewhere before we reach that stage, that's why today I want to open up the opportunities for the SAF volunteer corps. Because today we have, for every 10 people that apply to be a SAF VC, we only take in 2. So certainly I think we can take in more because there is, if you like, a strong pipeline of people who wants to experience some aspects of the entire 2 years. So for example, someone have suggested to me, medical. Why don't you say that, why don't you allow more SAF volunteer women to be able to join the SAF VC to conduct some medical things. They may not be at the front line, but even back home, and today there's no such thing as front line and back line. If Singapore is ever attacked, we are all on the line. right. That's correct. Right. So then why don't you allow them to do so? And then there's even this argument that, as we become a more aged society, having some of these caregiving skills, it's very useful. So that's one. I've also heard suggestions from people that says that, like what Tanisha was saying that just now, if anybody attack us, I can pick up a rifle and I'm not waiting for somebody. I can go and either fly a drone or go and shoot around. So that is why when I built the MMRC2, the multi-mission range complex, right, I have this long-term vision that if you pass your security clearance and then you are part of the SAFVC or even in time to come, even more than SAFVC, if you just want to go and maintain some currency in terms of shooting, it's a very positive thing and it's a very powerful deterrent message for any potential aggressor to know that in Singapore, even men or women, they can just pick up a rifle and go and fight.
Right? I love that.
Today, we have designed our system. In the past, when we were using the old AR-15 M16, it takes a whole week to teach people how to zero your rifle, how to do this. But with all the new rifles that comes with the scope and factory zero, that means where you place your laser aiming point is, and that's where the round is. And I have shown this to the media, even the people who have never been trained in the NS before, they'll pick it up within a couple of hours. And then it's a totally different sense of ownership and commitment once you can do that.
Yeah.
Or even as just now you were mentioning drones, right? There's nothing to say that the females cannot fly a drone. In fact, some of the best drone trainers that I have are not your typical archetype of the combat fit type, Some of them, in fact, I have quite a few of my BMTC drone trainers they are actually in the previous definition non-combat fit, but they are some of the best drone operators teaching my rest of the combat fit recruits how to use drone. So today, I think as we go forward, we have more and more opportunities for people to serve in different capacities and not be straight-jacketed by this combat fit, non-combat fit, male versus female. I think different people just have different skill sets that can contribute to total defense.
There are so many female gamers now.
Yeah.
They sure can fire a weapon one.
Yeah.
I see how they fire in game. Good.
This is my formal announcement that I will be doing the women's boot camp.
Yay!
Okay, before we end this episode, Minister, I just wanted to ask you what you think NS will look like in 10 years' time. I think you kind of touched on it briefly.
Well, in 10 years' time, I think NS will continue to evolve. First, I think my vision will be that for anyone that comes into our NSF and NS system, we should not have a preconceived idea on what this person can do or cannot do. We should try to allow that person to fulfill their potential, each according to his own. And this must not be a static process. As the person grows into different roles in his civilian life, we should constantly reevaluate where he best can contribute and where he best want to contribute. And I don't see this black and white thing whereby it's 2 years NSF, 10 years NS-men, and that's it. In fact, actually, many of these skill sets goes beyond the so-called physical fitness type. I can see many more people contributing like what we have today, and even more will contribute beyond their 10 years. Today, we already have many of them. Some of them are commanders. They extend their NS-men contributions beyond the 2+10. But many of them are specialists, whether it's in the IT side, the cyber side, intelligence side, because as they grow older, they become even better than what the conventional vocations that depend on the physical part down there. So I will see that. I will see a growing call of a SAF volunteer corps that allows us to bring in not just females, but even new citizens. And then what I really hope to achieve is that in Singapore, we'll continue growing this culture whereby everybody feels it. I have a responsibility. I can do something, and I want to do something. This is very powerful because the most important deterrence is not how many NS men we have, but for the whole country to say that I can do something, I want to do something, and I want to contribute. And I think that's very powerful for us.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much, Minister and Thomas, for joining us today. I've learned a lot, and thank you guys for your service and the defense of the
And
country.
we look forward to you joining us.
I will be sharing on my experience at the women's boot camp if it goes well. I hope you guys have enjoyed listening to our perspectives and experiences shared today. As usual, let us know if you have any thoughts or questions in the comments, and we'll try to answer them in the next episode. This was Turnout. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Turned out.